Yeah. When I look around in the world, what do I see? I see footprints that man have left on the sand while walking through times. I see proof of our ambition, figments of our imagination. And I ask myself, when will it end? When will it end? It is plain to see, universally this land is not bountiful as it was. Simply because in this quest for success, nothing stands in man's way. All rivers run dry. Soon the birds won't fly, the mountains will be no longer high. And when I really think of it, yes, I just wonder why. Why? I see charity deplored, equal rights totally ignored, wisdom and ingenuity working in accord, simply to afford such inventions as thermonuclear warfare and environmental warfare. And I wonder now, where do we go from here? Profits everywhere. Gaze upon the horizon, and the cloud of judgment will come as the savage hands of unscrupulous men defile everything passed by. Time is running out as we eat and drink species at the brink of being extinct, yeah. And I think no one can deny that the price of progress is high. Really, really high, high, high. I see consciousness abate as today we live recklessly. Money make egos inflate and thereby create a turbulent state. I see a struggle between the sexes, new hang-ups and old complexes. Now the question is, right in context, what shall be next? I've already seen this will have come divided between race, color, creed, and class. And some of the things the scripture predict, how it truthfully come to pass. Soil that wouldn't be here. Children making children to be a part of this growing mass. And I ask, if this is progress, Lord, how long would it last? How long would it last? How long would it last? I see craziness increase, bogus priests and corrupt police. No peace, the struggle don't cease as man turn to drugs, searching for relief. I see a frightened humanity, a sad and confused society, and it saddens me. How shall it be in time to come? Can this world withstand this constant misuse and abuse by the hands of man as they try to shape this world in a way to fit with all their plans? Time is running out as we eat and drink species at the brink of being extinct, yes. And I think no one can deny that the price of progress is high, real high. What do I see? I I see footprints that man have left on the sand while walking through time. I see fruits of our ambitions, figments of our imaginations, and I ask myself, when will it end? When will it end? It is plain to see, universally this land is not bountiful as it was, simply because in his quest for success, nothing stands in man's way. All rivers run dry. Soon the birds will fly, the mountains will be no longer high. And when I really think of it, I just wonder why. When I come to sing, I come to sing.
King Austin, progress, progress. That calypso was voted a couple of years ago as the greatest calypso of all time. Questioning progress, the price that we have to pay for progress. The mountains will no longer be there. Species will be gone. Human beings will become extinct. The price of progress, King Austin asks in that calypso, is it worth it? Is it worth it? We in Guyana, we are experiencing never before seen wealth. And our government would have us believe that we are seeing progress. Roads are being built, bridges are being built, all kinds of big businesses are going up, and we say it's progress. Already we see human beings are being moved out of the way for roads to be built. Human beings are being kicked off their own property to build roads. Roads before human beings. Progress. Progress. The price of progress. We saw it in Mocha. We saw it at Hillfoot. We saw it in Mackenzie. The price of progress. Roads before people. Wealth and riches before people. And now at Coverdale, we have discovered that they are processing waste in the backyards of human beings. Progress. Progress. Waste processing before people. Environmental injustice. Environmental racism. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. That's what we're talking about tonight. Progress. Progress. The Calypsonian said, what is the price of progress? We want progress. But the price that this government wants us to pay for progress, we ought not to be paying that price. We want progress. We want roads. We want bridges, but not at the expense of people, human beings, poor people. And now, waste. It's as if East Bank is the testing ground for this government when it comes to other things at the expense of people. Progress, they call it. How can it be progress when human beings are being rendered useless, extinct? By now, you all have been following the story there at Coverdale on the East Bank. In people's backyards, in people's villages, chemical waste, the treatment plant, they call it, the treatment plant. Why don't they carry it to Pradoville and treat the waste there? Environmental injustice, environmental racism. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101 Tuesday night. Miss Audreyanna Thomas, no stranger to our program. She's going to be here because she has been in the thick of things there, fighting back against the environmental injustice and environmental racism that is being visited on our people. You see, there is always going to be a struggle between a certain kind of development and the environment. We are not stupid. We are not unreasonable. It should never be a choice between oil wealth and the environment. It should never be a choice between progress and people's lives. We must balance progress in the infrastructure with progress in people's lives. If we are dealing up in chemicals and we have to get rid of the chemical waste, we must do so without putting our people at risk. There is no negotiation when it comes to that. The choice between a certain kind of progress and the lives of our people is not a moral choice. The moral thing to do is to safeguard the lives and the welfare of our people. That's where we stand. That's where we stand. I rather save the lives and the livelihood of the people at Mocha than running a road on the East Bank. Non-negotiable. Keep your road. And I keep my life of my people. The livelihood of my people. There has to be a way in which we can build roads and build people's lives at the same time. If you can't do that, get the hell out of government. There must be a way to get rid of waste. Chemical waste. Treating chemical waste. There must be a way to do that without wasting the lives of our people. Carry your waste and treat it at Pradoville. Carry your waste and treat it among your supporters who you want to impress that you are making progress on their behalf. Carry your waste and treat it there. And to see big men excusing that kind of reckless behavior. Good evening to all of you. Lawrence, good evening. Vashti, all the Vashtis here tonight. Good evening, Ivor, Miller, Lester, Tom, the Bantu man, the Bantu king. Good evening to you. Good evening to all of you. Yvonne McPherson, good evening to you. Good night to some of you. Good afternoon to others of you. We are on tonight, and we're going to be talking about the environment and environmental injustice. How we're going to turn back that injustice. We are on a collision course in Guyana. A collision between those who care not for our people and those of our people who care about the livelihood of our country, the people of our country. Let me bring in Sister Audreyanna Thomas, because she has been in the thick of things there. Sister Audreyanna, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Hinds. How are you?
I am surviving by Almighty God's grace. He's my sword and my shield. Without him, I may be nothing in the face of the infidels who are visiting all kinds of castrations on us. I am not preaching tonight, so I will stop there.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Hinds, because I want to ask you to let me do some preaching tonight, too. So, so please, because I plan to do some preaching tonight, too.
Well, you know, we could not be present today had it not been for preaching, had it not been for spiritualism, had it not been for faith, Faith.
Amen.
If
Amen.
our people didn't have
Amen.
that, we would not be here today. They brought them screaming across the Middle Passage against their will. And when they passed Christianity, because they didn't want to introduce them to Christianity, they peep and they see this Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. They said, that is Africa with our multiple gods. And they took Christianity and turned it into something beautiful.
Preach, Dr. Hinds.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I am, Dr. Hinds, it's interesting that you've started the program this way, and I'm going to go right into it. Last week I was praying, Thursday, because I'm really travailing over a lot of things. And so I pray, and right now I've been fasting since mid-May I've been fasting. And I've been fasting every day. And last week, Thursday, I was praying. And I can say this with confidence. God gave me a message for President Irfan Ali and Vice President Dadio. This is the message. Beginning of quote. Change course now. End of quote. I will repeat that. God has given me a message for President Mohammed Irfan Ali and Vice President Bharat Jagdeo. And this is the message. Beginning of quote. Change course now. End of quote.
Thank you.
Dr. Hinds, go ahead.
Remind me of Dr. King when he was speaking to America in the period during the Civil Rights Movement. And he said, America, you are too arrogant, and God will break your backbone. Jagdeo and Irfan Ali,
yes,
you are too arrogant. That is why God gave Audreyanna that message for you. He will break your backbone if you don't change course. Go ahead, sister.
And Dr. Hinds, I tell you what. So I was kind of wrestling. I said, God, give me a message for the president and the vice president. And so yesterday I was talking with a friend of mine and I was sharing it with him. And he said to me that if you're sure that you heard from God, deliver the message. He says, as a matter of fact, it's a warning. And he said, go and read Ezekiel 3. And so I went and I read Ezekiel 3 and I decided that, you know what? I'm going to deliver this message. Because my friend said to me yesterday, he said, you will suffer the consequences for delivering the message. And you will also suffer the consequences for not delivering the message. And as I read Ezekiel 3, I realized that he was right. So my task has been done now, Dr. Hines. I've delivered the message, and I'm not responsible for how President Irfan Ali and the Vice President interpret the message, what they decide to do. I did my part. I've delivered the message.
And I'm glad you delivered the message on this program. One of the things that you've had to endure as you deal with this environmental injustice and racism, which we'll talk about tonight, is that you've been the subject of all kinds of death threats and so forth. I go back to Dr. Martin Luther King, who in the middle of the civil rights movement got so many death threats. And one night it was overbearing. And he said he went outside and he sat on his porch and he began to pray. And he asked God, if I'm fighting for the justice of my people, why are people calling me in your name? In your name, they're calling me to threaten to kill me. And he said he got a message. And God said, Martin, go back to the God of your father and your grandfather, because it is that God that you are serving. And those who are sending you death threats, they're serving some other God. And Dr. Martin Luther King said, he then embraced forever the Black church, the Black Christianity, because he realized that Christianity too had a face. Those who were calling to kill him were different kinds of Christians. Martin wasn't arrogant to say they are not Christians. He said they are different kind of Christian. And God told him, differentiate yourself from them by embracing the God of your father and your grandfather. Sister Audreyanna Thomas, talk to me.
And Dr. Hines, I'll tell you what, as I read, the messages that, were sent to me, and I pondered like one of the message, somebody said that you have lost your reputation. You have no idea how you've lost your reputation. And you will never get a job in the private sector. And I pondered on those words because I'm thinking, here I am, Dr. Hines. I graduated from the University of Cambridge. I have studied I have 3 masters. I'm just sharing with you some background. I've studied at the University of Cambridge. I lived in Italy for 6 months when I was studying, because I studied at the US University of Loyola University, Chicago. But the program I did was taught in Rome, Italy. So I lived in Italy for 6 months while I was doing the program. And traveled the world for the past 20 years, Dr. Hines. I've been all over. I heard you talking with Mr. Pereira last night about Goree Island. I've been to Goree Island in Dakar, in Senegal. And it's quite an interesting place to go. If ever you have an opportunity, go to Goree Island in Senegal. And, I worked in environmental health. I worked in environment. I studied rule of law. So what I'm doing is what I've been trained to do, what I've done over the years. I have, for 9 years, I was the national coordinator for an organization, the Water Supply and Sanitation Collaborative Council, that was based in Geneva. Initially, it was administered by the World Health Organization, and then it is now being administered by the United Nations Office for Projects and Services. It is now called the Sanitation Hygiene Fund. So I started initially for 9 years as the national coordinator in Guyana, and then I was appointed as a steering committee member from 2014 to 2020. So here I am. I've been to Geneva like 17 times over the past 20 years, traveled the world. We've worked with many African countries in terms of our projects, Tanzania, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Senegal, as well as many Asian countries, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, and a number of countries. So here I am now, want to contribute towards my country. And I consider the person who sent me the message to be a young person. But here it is, this young person feels that they have so much power based on their connections and based on whatever, that they can say to me that you will never get another job in the private sector. And I thought that that was profound, because you won't imagine how real it is, right? It's one thing to say it, but it's the next thing to actually do it. And I thought I wanted to send the person several messages. I wanted to send them a message: no weapon that's formed against me shall prosper, and every tongue that has risen up against me in judgment I condemn. I wanted to send them a message that the sun shall not smite me by day, nor the moon by night. I wanted to send them a message that my God shall prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. He shall anoint my head with oil, and my cup will run over. I wanted to send them some messages, but I said, Audreyanna, hold your peace. Hold your peace and engage differently. So I never responded. Why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you all of this because what you are, that person expressed what is actually being played out in different parts of this country. This government, this Irfan Ali and Barjagdio's government, appeals to the worst in us. What that message that was sent to me, and I am going to speak here as truthful. I'll speak truth to power tonight, without any fear of any kind of backlash, because my God is greater. And a time had we have to get to a point, Dr. Hines, where the Bible says we call it by its name, and we admonish each other in love. And I'm saying to the president and the vice president, you're taking us down the wrong road. You are bringing out the worst in us, and you have to change course. And so when what has happened is that this government has authority, and they think that they really have power. They don't really have power. They can't tell that seawall that the ocean don't overflow that seawall and flood Georgetown. There's some other power that holds the water in the Atlantic Ocean back, so that it does not flood Georgetown and the coast. And it's not the vice president. It's not the president. Every morning that they wake up, with all the monies that we're accumulating, we can't buy the air that we breathe. We can't. And so I think the point has come for us to recognize that we are mere mortals, and there's a higher power. And I think the government is crossing the line between, there's a song, Father, I see that you are drawing the line in the sand. And I believe that God is drawing the line in the sand with this government. I remember in the Bible with Joshua said, those who are for God, come over here. And those who are not for God, stay over there. Joshua drew the line in the sand. I'm drawing my line in the sand with this government. Straighten up and fly right. You're crossing a line with us. Even in the context of you're crossing a line with us. And Dr. Hines, I will say this to you. You see that Coverdale matter? I remember discussing with some residents at Coverdale. We were discussing 2 months ago what happened at Maka. And we were saying, if ever this happens in Coverdale, what are we going to do? And we decided we're going to fight. 2 months ago, we were saying, if ever what happens at Maka. So you see, we were prepared. So you see this fight here. I wanted to, when I'm going to share, how is it that we were so alert? Because we were discussing this 2 months ago. If ever this happens to us, what are we going to do? And we said we're going to fight. And we said, even if it's one of us, the Bible says 1 will put 1,000 to flight and 2 will put 10,000 to flight, right? We're not dealing with 10,000. So 2 of us can work. 1 of us can work. And so I'm sharing it with you, and I'm saying to the government, pull back. Pull back. pull back. Dr. Hines, let me tell you, you know what I was doing? I started to hum. Let me hum a bit. I was humming. I want to say this to President Jagdeo, to President Ali and Vice President Jagdeo. When a Black woman starts humming, it's because the pain is so too much for her to bear that she can no longer verbalize it. So she expresses that hurt and pain with sort of the sound of her voice. When Black people start humming Amazing Grace, is when we start remembering when we were crossing the Atlantic on the ships. And I've been humming Amazing Grace recently because my pain is too hard, too much for me to articulate it. Let me tell you, Dr. Hines, tonight I'm going to speak. Mucka was my red line. You know what was profound about Mucka? When one of the women, the residents, said that I asked him to let me go back in and get my photographs. And he said to me, we're going to pay for that. Don't worry. We're going to pay for it. There are these little things that you take away. So whoever it was, has put a monetary value on the memories that that woman wanted to go and get. We know, I want to give you another example in Puerto Rico. When an East Indian woman, when the government was breaking down those buildings, those people, properties at Puerto Rico, an East Indian woman said something that hit me like a thunderbolt. She said, if the Black people in Mocha had stood up, or let me use her word, if the Black people in Mocha stand up, this wouldn't have happened to me. Dr. Hines, are you listening to me?
Yes, I am. I
am expressing to you how we are processing our society. So the government, we now have oil money, and the government is seeing land in the context of, let's take, for example, Coverdale. Somebody has land, you have money, you want to do a waste treatment plant. But you're getting into, somebody told me the government can claim eminent domain, and I told them we will claim ancestors' domain, and we will claim heaven's domain. And we were, and so I think that, and this is where last night I was listening to you and Mr. Ferrero, and I realized that this young, well, I won't say young, but the President Ali, the Vice President Jagdeo, even the Attorney General, I don't think they understand life and the multidimensional aspect of life the way Mr. Ramatar understands it, Clement Roy understands it. You were right. And so, Coverdale for us, after 185 years that we have been at Coverdale, where are we going?
So,
where are we going?
Sister Audreyanna, go from the beginning. Tell us what has happened in Coverdale. There's a waste plant there. Tell us how it got there, how you all discovered it's there, and talk to us, walk us through what has been happening these last couple of weeks.
Okay, so in 2021, GOES, which is the Global Oil Environmental Services, and JAPARTS applied to the Environmental Protection Agency to process oil and gas waste at Coverdale. Mm-hmm. And so we had opposed and we objected.
Did they consult you all?
they didn't consult us initially because the Environmental Protection Agency didn't require an environmental impact assessment to be done. And so they had published a notice that this company had applied for an environmental permit. We then submitted an appeal to the Environmental Assessment Board. We had 2 hearings. In one of the hearings, I remember consulting with a lawyer who is very familiar with environmental policy and oil and gas waste management and waste policy rather. And he said that y'all don't want it to appear as if y'all are just opposing the investment. So think about if you can arrive at some middle ground where the community is protected and the lives of the residents are protected and the investment can go along. GOES is an American company that had a lot of experience in oil and gas waste management. They even said they had experience in oil and gas, in oil spill cleanup. So at one of the hearings, I'd asked the Environmental Assessment Board to take with me a soil chemist and a community development specialist. And so the Environmental Assessment Board said he agreed with that. So I took somebody who has a PhD in soil chemistry, and I took the community development expert to the hearing. Having listened to what the GOES representative said about what they wanted to do, we reviewed this project summary that the EPA had posted on the website, and the soil chemist said to me that if GOES do what they're saying they will do, and the EPA provide the oversight, then the community should be okay. So we had approved that on the basis that GOES had so much experience in oil and gas waste management. And then for some reason, but Dr. Hines, I must say to you, I inject my faith here again. I was not comfortable with the decision. And I remember fasting and praying for 40 days. And I said, God, if this operation is not good for our community, don't let it continue. And by some miracle, the GOES and JAPART suspended their operations last year, January. So we thought that, great, we don't have to deal with this anymore. And then a few weeks ago, then we saw that this new company, Professional Waste Solutions, Inc., they set up, it's now a new company, and it is managed by Mr. Jetu. Mr. Jetu was the landlord for GOES and JAPART. So Mr. Jetu, as we know, is into timber and logging. Oil and gas is a specialized, waste management is a specialized field. And so the next thing we know, that Mr. Jetu had gotten $214 million from the government to operate this new oil and gas waste treatment plant. The EPA transferred the environmental authorization or permit from GOES and JAPART to this new company, Professional Waste Solutions, Inc., still without requiring any environmental impact assessment, still without even having a consultation with the community, or even the environmental access. The Environmental Act, Article 11, it states that this new company should have really submitted a new application for an environmental permit. What that would have done, the EPA would have then published a notice, and the residents of Coverdale would have had an opportunity to then submit an appeal to the Environmental Assessment Board. But by the Environmental Protection Agency giving this, transferring the permit from GOES to Professional Waste Solutions, Inc., the residents did not have that opportunity to file that appeal. And so there are a number of things here. One, if this is a private company, I mean, I'm not getting into this, but I'm just making this making this point for information's sake. So if this is a private company, then perhaps PWSI should have gone to the commercial bank to get a loan to but instead the government has given the company $214 million, I assume, as startup funding for startup funds. So then the question is does the government own the company, this new Professional Waste Services Inc.? The reason I'm raising that is because what has happened now with the residents of Coverdale is that here is this waste treatment plant, oil and gas waste treatment plant in the community, no environmental impact assessment, no consultations with the community. The government has given this money. So normally the government is supposed to be this neutral partner. The government and the Environmental Protection Agency are supposed to be the neutral partners. So the residents of Coverdale could have then gone to the government and complained, and they could have gone to the Environmental Protection Agency. But now the Environmental Protection Agency and the government is complicit. The residents of Coverdale, they were left with nowhere to go. And the government, this is what is so egregious about this matter. So we started to educate we started to challenge the matter. And when we were having that community meeting, there were forces in the background. This gentleman who has been messaging me, he's very closely with the government. So I think it's fair to assume that once the government saw that he published some things about me and about the project, then the government, if they were not involved, then they should have said, no, let us investigate this matter. But he published them in the government newspapers, the Guyana Chronicle, as well as other media which is closely associated with the government. So it's fair to assume that the government is very involved in this matter. So one of the things that they've been saying is that I am misleading the residents of Coverdale. And one thing they said that it's because I wanted work from Japarts and Goes, and because I didn't get work, that's why I am attacking them. So mind you, I did consult with my lawyer as to whether this was libelous, because let me say it here on national television, I did not approach Goes or Japarts and ask them for any consultancy services. And so I was telling the lawyer that he would have to get Goes and Japarts to provide the evidence that I approached them for work. So he was trying to make it sound to the residents of Coverdale that because I didn't get work, that's why I was challenging it, and that I was lying to the residents. But I didn't write the science, Dr. Hinds, about the chemicals which are being used for oil and gas production, and the chemicals which are in oil and gas waste. I didn't write the science. I didn't write the science that says that oil and gas waste are some of the most toxic waste around. I didn't write that. I didn't write the EPA Act that stated what is required in terms of applying for the environmental permit. So I'm saying this because I just in the event that some of the residents are thinking that I have some ulterior motive, and that is why I am driving this process. I deliberately give you my background to establish that this is my field of work. It just so happened that now I am actually having to defend my family, my neighbors, my community. And so that's a background to this matter. What we have done today, I sent a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency because there's nothing on their website about this Professional Waste Solutions Inc. And so I wrote them and I asked them to provide certain documents so that we can have a better understanding of what kinds of waste will be treated in our environment, etc. And then I wrote the chairman of the Environmental Assessment Board, and I requested a hearing, because since we didn't go through the process according to the Act, the citizens are left, and those who would like to ask questions are left without any kind of legal process or steps to have a hearing on this matter. So I've written to the chairman, and I expect to get a response from the executive director of the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as the Environmental Assessment Board. And so one of the things, in addition to that, the Ministry of Agriculture I'm not sure, Dr. Hines, if I need to pause here for you to ask a question or if I should.
Well, yes, I want to get, so there was no environmental impact assessment. Did you, the residents, consult with any environmentalists, environmental scientists who advise you all? And if so, what have they advised you? How dangerous is this facility in a place like Coverdale?
Dr. Hines, yes. So we've had, we now have the support of several environmentalists. I don't know if they've even written a letter in the press in support of us on our behalf, and they have they've even written a letter, and we're working closely with them. We're even, I would say at this point, getting some legal advice. And so we, but also, Dr. Hines, I have worked in waste management for over 2 decades, and human waste is dangerous. And that's why with human waste, we bang in people's heads. Wash your hands when you leave the bathroom. Wash your hands when you leave the bathroom before you eat. And so if human waste is dangerous, could you imagine oil and gas waste? So this is highly hazardous and toxic waste. Dr. Vincent Adams has been supporting us very closely. We've had other persons like we've had Miss Vanda Radzik. She has been also providing us support. She's from civil society. And we've had some other environmentalists.
Red Thread was out there.
Red Thread held Red Thread held a protest for us last night. Wednesday.
But tell me, Audreyanna, tell our audience, what are the risks to human life of this plan there?
The risk, Doctor, is interesting because like I said, I've worked in health, and yes. and so over the risk would be we can have an explosion of cancer in the community over the next 20 years. By then, the waste treatment plant could have been closed down, the government could be changed, EPA could be changed, and the residents are left to bear the burden of the effects of this waste treatment facility. So it could affect if the air becomes contaminated and they're burning. So more than likely the smoke goes up into the air and the air will become contaminated. That can
how far away is this facility from where people live? Give us a sense.
Dr. Hines, that's why the environmental impact assessment is so important, because the environmental impact assessment will scientifically examine all of these factors. But I can say to you that we share the same space essentially with this waste treatment plant, the residents of Coverdale. So the smoke is going to get to where the residents are, right? Some of that, the air, it's going to contaminate the air. If they throw things in the Demerara River, then the water becomes contaminated. That water flows or down, they share the water, the surface water also. In addition to that, when it's the high tide on the western side of the East Bank Public Road, it floods. So when that flood water goes into the yard of the residents of Coverdale, if that flood water goes into the yard, then and residents walk in they could get skin infections, for example. Also, residents use that. The Ministry of Agriculture is working with over 58 farmers in the community. The farmers don't use the water from the pipe to water their produce necessarily. They use the water from the surface water to water their produce. So what we're saying is that there's a conflict here, even in terms of policy. And because the Ministry of Agriculture is working with 58 farmers to expand farming in the community, and yet you put an oil and gas waste treatment, and then Go Invest, for example, has given $240 million for this company to operate an oil and gas waste treatment plant. And so this is one of the points I'd like to make. It shows a gap in terms of policy harmonization. So there's need for policy harmonization. If Coverdale is going to be an agricultural community, then yes, there's also a gap in terms of the legal framework, harmonizing the legal framework as it relates to investment, environment, health, agriculture. And so what we've seen in this case is where the investment into this oil and gas waste treatment plant took priority over the environment, the environmental law, as well as environmental policy, because the EPA just transferred the permit, and not followed the Environmental Act. So it is clear that the investment has taken priority over the Environmental Act, health, agriculture, etc. So one of the things that we need to push for is more harmonization, policy harmonization, and legislative harmonization. So if there's a more structured way to doing development, instead of somebody has a piece of land, so let's put a waste treatment plant there. Then,
all right.
Yes, we would not have.
So you all have been engaging the EPA. In essence, what is the EPA telling you all?
Officially, we have not, since this over the past 3 weeks, we did not engage the EPA directly until we sent that letter to them today.
So who have you all been engaging in the authorities directly? The Ministry of Natural Resources? Who you all have been engaging?
No legal agency, because it became apparent, or obvious rather, that the government, I would say, and the EPA were both complicit and compromised on this matter. And when we were, yes, go ahead.
How did Joel Bagwandin get involved in this thing?
So Joel Bagwandin was hired by the company Professional Waste Solutions Inc.
This is the J2 company.
As a management consultant. Usually with things like these, the company was being challenged in the media. So companies will normally hire somebody, and maybe in PR, I could tell you, and say, make this matter go away. So I figure that Joel Bagwandin was hired to do just that, to make this matter go away. And yes, so that was how Joel Bagwandin.
And what did he do? Wow, what did he do? I noticed he had some exchanges that included your name and so on. What did Joel Bagwandin do?
So what Joel Bagwandin did, the slant Joel Bagwandin took, was to attack my credibility. And so if he was able to show the residents of Coverdale that I have an ulterior motive, which was a financial interest in this project, and because I was not successful with that. That is why I am attacking the project. So he started out with that slant to say that was the reason. And then they had this 3-page advertisement in the Guyana Chronicle and another newspapers. And then they had this, so all of that with my name and stating that I have a financial interest. I guess after that did not work, then the next thing he did was he started to send me these messages. So what he did is every time these things were published, he would send them to me personally to ensure that I got them. So every time there was a publication, he sent it to me. And so the day after let me say that the number that I got these things from, I figured that it was Joel Bagwandin's number. I reported to the police. Since last week, Monday, the police said they were going to call me back, and until now, they've never called me back. They told me to.
So you have no proof. You have no proof that it's his number.
It is his number because his face was on it, and it also had JB. In addition to that, I was able to make the link because he signed his name under the advertisement as Joel Bagwandin, the director for a company. And then so I knew that this JB and the number was his. Also, I sent the number to the media, and some persons from the media would have called him. I didn't call him because I didn't want to have any direct contact with him, since I'd already reported it to the police and I'd already spoken to my lawyer. And so he said, and so this message came, and the message said that telling me that I'm a racist, and that I am a vexatious to the some real abusive things. And and that I will never get a job in the private sector because my reputation is so damaged now. And I'm thinking, but wait a minute. All I'm trying to do is to defend the rights of the residents at Coverdale, and to defend the the rights of the residents at Coverdale, to defend the community, because this is oil and gas waste treatment is highly hazardous and dangerous, and I'm racist for that. And one would and so it was just interesting that people would conclude that I am racist because I am fighting for this community, so that 20 years down the road you don't have a black community with an explosion of or predominantly black community with an explosion of respiratory and diseases and possibly cancer. In addition to that, Dr. Hines, I have 250 family members who are living in Coverdale, because my family have a huge estate at Coverdale, and we've been living there since the 1840s. We've been landowners. So I am fighting for my 250 family members too. And so in addition to that, this is that's where I grew up. That's where my father grew up. That's where my father's father grew up. My father's father grew up in Coverdale. So I have a deep roots and a vested interest in ensuring that the community is protected, the lives of the residents are protected, and the as well as the environment does not become contaminated. So
one
that
of the things
alone is enough reason for me to
enough reason for you to be involved. But one of the things I noticed that the government side, I can't remember if it was Joel Bagman then, that they said the community is not behind you. It's only about 8 people. Is that true?
Well, let me tell you, the Ministry of Agriculture has been working with some of the residents. They have about 58 farmers, and the Ministry of Agriculture and the government, they've been supporting the farmers. They've been doing the drainage and different things. The community now has all-weather roads, and many of the farmers, even though they will be affected largely if from this operations, they weren't afraid, but they opted not to come out to the community meetings. So many of them would have spoken to me. I have 250 family members in the community. The government does not think they're talking to me. And so so I told them, okay, fine, y'all don't want to come out, I will go to front, because it doesn't make sense for y'all to be planting, doing farming, and you can't, the soil becomes contaminated, the water becomes contaminated, and you can't continue to do your farming. And so this is where, so when you saw, in addition to that, we had gotten a petition signed by a number of residents who signed the petition, and that they did not want oil and gas waste being treated in their community, nor radioactive materials being stored in their community. Dr. Hines, I'd like to also tell you this. It was interesting because the last time, after Goals and Japarts were got the go ahead to do the oil and gas waste treatment there, a few months later, National Hardware and a Trinidadian company, non-destructive testers, applied to the EPA to store radioactive materials at what used to be the Clear Brick factory also. And the EPA did not require an environmental impact assessment. So one of the things, and so we challenged it, and that that process, they did not get the approval. So we would have been, Government would have become the oil and gas waste dump site. And what is interesting, so we would have had radioactive materials being stored at one end of the village at the Clear Brick factory, and oil and gas waste being treated at the other end of the village. I want to say this before I pause and let you speak, Dr. Hines. The vision for the community, then we have 2 visions for the community. One is where people see us as there's land and we're the oil and gas dump site. The other vision, we know the residents for the past 4 years, we have been developing our community economic and development plan. and around tourism, agriculture, and semi-industrial. We've always been a semi-industrial community. And so while we see it, we keep saying all the time that we would like to transform Coverdale into a country town. So when you want to come someplace where you have the country element in there and the country town, that's what we want to do with Coverdale. And one of the things I want to say, one of the things I was amazed at in Italy is how the Italians were able to blend modernity with tradition. And so we are currently developing a tourism product that's called Demerara Countryside Tours. Demerara Countryside Tours is curating the way of life and the history in that community there on both banks, the west and the east bank, since when the Dutch was there. Because as you know, one of the islands in the Demerara River right behind us is Berzeland. And Berzeland, when Essequibo had become separate from when Demerara became a separate county from Essequibo, the Dutch had occupied the island Berzeland, which is in close to us there at Coverdale, as the capital of Demerara. So what we're doing currently, we're curating the history into a tourism product, the history and the way of life. And over the next, in the next year, 2 years, we've already have resorts, Dr. Hines. If you see, we've already designed the resorts. If you see how these resorts are beautiful. And so, and every 2 morning we wake up, because we're not sharing these things with people, because when you share your ideas, the next thing you know, people have money and they implement them. And so every 2 morning we wake up, somebody wants to store radioactive materials at the clay brick factory, and somebody wants to store oil and gas waste. The vision for the community, people see us as the place to put the oil and gas waste dump site, while we see the community as a place that can be transformed into this beautiful, like I said, country town, doing agriculture, tourism, and we've always been a semi-industrial community. We've had the plywood factory, the clay brick factory, Bansiram. We've had Alliance Farms. We've had Demerara Woods. We've had the all of those industries were covered in. And I'd like to say this, that if the people who were the company that was managing the plywood factory, if they would like to come back and revive that plywood factory, if it's a viable venture, the residents of Coverdale will support it. The point is, these industries were not dangerous to our health, our lives, and our environment. So it's not that we're against investment, but we're against investment that is toxic and hazardous. And we are not the oil and gas waste dump site. And we're saying that this Professional Waste Services Inc. company must be closed. And that's our non-negotiable position.
So where are things now as we speak?
Where we are now is, well, today I delivered the letter, as a matter of fact, to the executive director of the Environmental Protection Agency, requesting details on the operations of PWSI. And I've also sent a letter to the chairman of the Environmental Assessment Board for us to have a hearing, because we've never had a hearing on this to voice our objections. So I sent him a letter stating our objections and appealing and an appeal to the operations of this waste treatment plant in our community. I've also included in the letter to the chairman of the Environmental Assessment Board that in these discussions, we'd like to discuss the closure of this oil and gas waste treatment plant.
What would you like the public to do to help to support your cause?
On Saturday, we're having a solidarity walk in Coverdale. So we're going to start on the western side of the clay brick factory, and we're going to walk on the parapet, going all the way down to the oil and gas waste treatment plant. So we're inviting neighbors from Coverdale, from Suzdite, Pearl, Timeri, people who are friends of the residents of Coverdale, to come out, whether they be environmentalists, whoever they are, to come out on Saturday and support us. We start at 10 o'clock. We'll walk from 10, we'll end at 1, and we'll walk from the clear brick factory, opposite the clear brick factory, going all the way down to the plant. The other thing that we
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
The other thing that we plan to do, Dr. Hines, is because all truth is parallel. Before something happens in the natural realm, it happens in the spirit realm. And so we recognize that we're fighting both in the natural as well as in the spirit realm. And we have 40 days of fasting and praying from the 15th of this month to the 24th of October. And it's a no-meat fast. So we're asking persons to join with us and fast. Fasting and praying. We're fasting for 3 things we're praying for. One is for the closure of this PWSI oil and gas waste treatment plant in Coverdon. We're fasting and praying. This is a subset of a bigger problem. So we're fasting and praying for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding for those in charge in the oil and gas sector and industry in Guyana. And thirdly, we're fasting and praying for greater alignment with God's plan and purpose, and for divine order in the oil and gas industry and the oil and gas sector. Because since we found oil, I think our problems and challenges in Guyana have increased maybe 1,000-fold. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, the blessings of the Lord make it rich and addeth no sorrow. And for a blessing that this oil is, it is adding too much sorrow to our lives. And I think we also need divine intervention.
Sister Audreyanna Thomas here. Again, Sister Audreyanna and the people of Covenant will be holding a solidarity walk on Saturday, this coming Saturday, beginning at 10 o'clock in the morning. Assembly point is the clay brick factory. Once you get a Covenant, ask anybody where the clay brick factory is, and we are inviting all of you, those of you in the vicinity and even further afield, to go and give solidarity to the people of Covenant. We're all in this thing together. Sister Audreyanna, closing thoughts before we go.
Dr. Hines, I couldn't help but wonder, why is it so easy for people to look at Covenant and decide that we will store radioactive materials here? We will process oil and gas waste here. Why is it so easy? Why was it so easy for the environment?
Can I intervene with a question? What's the ethnic demographic in Covenant?
About 80% of the people are Afro-Guyanese.
All right. What is the social class of most of the people there? Are they generally poor people, working people?
They're generally poor, working class people, and generally, yes.
The person who's given whose land is being used to this thing, is that person a villager?
He owns land in the village.
He owns land in the village. He's a landowner.
He is a businessman. Jetu, you know, Jetu sawmills. So he's an established businessman in the timber industry.
And he owns land. All right. Yes. So we get it. It's a community that is based mostly African Guyanese, mostly poor people, and the land, the person behind this thing is a rich person. Continue.
But Dr. Hines, you know what is interesting is that my family have a huge estate, which is many times more the land that this person owns, but they don't have the resources and that this person has.
They don't have the connection, you mean?
They don't have the connections. In addition to that, they have been there for almost 180. They've been landowners for 185 years. This person is a recent landowner in the village. So it's just interesting. And so in my closing comments, I'd like to say one of the things for communities is that I would say to communities, do not approve any of these hazardous and highly dangerous operations in your community without the EPA recommending that an environmental impact assessment be done. I'm sharing from our experience. The other thing, Dr. Hines, is that it was so easy for a highly dangerous and operations like this to be passed from hand to hand so easily. Covenant has about 459 residents. So when the Go Invest article had been published about the $214 million, it talked about all of the wonderful things in terms of waste, in terms of processing the waste, etc. Nothing about the health of the community and the environment. And so that was not even a factor. And even as Joel Bagwandin started to with his publications, that was not even a factor. Even the things which are told to the residents behind the scene, and this is what residents said to me. Residents said to me is that they have spoken to people like, and I'll call it, they've spoken to Mr. Jetu. I can say that because residents have told me that. They have spoken to him and they've spoken to other people. People even called to instruct people that they not to participate in the meeting that we were having, all because they were getting rakes and hoes and so on. So their lives were not important. It wasn't important to maintain an environment that where they can farm sustainably, right? And where they can protect their own lives. What was important was the monies that they're getting, as well as the hose and the forks
their silence is being bought.
Silence, exactly.
Does Mr. Jetu live in Coverdale?
I am not sure if he lives in Coverdale, but he has Jetu's lumber yard is in Coverdale. Yes. And so this waste treatment plant is on the southern side of the lumber yard.
Yeah, and he's not in the vicinity to smell.
But even if so, I will, Dr. Hines, importantly, I'd like to say to communities, ensure that the environmental impact assessment is being done. And I was saying to one of the residents, because they were trying to convince me that, they were told that everything is going to be all right. So I said, if this thing is so good for us, why don't they want to do the environmental impact assessment? Why is it that they don't want?
Why don't they share it around? Take one of these plants to Pradoville. Take one of it to Port Morant. Take one of it to Enmore. Equal opportunity. Sister Audreyanna Thomas.
Dr. Hines, my last point on this is that I'd like to say that we do not want this oil and gas waste treatment plant in our community. We do not want radioactive material stored in our community. We have a community development plan, and this does not fit into our community development plan, rather. And then I'd also like to say that leave something with communities. What was it about Coverdale that caused us to be able to be so alert and to push back? I also want to say community leadership is important.
Yes.
And because when those who are working with the government, for example, don't want to come out to the meetings, people who are, for example, getting these things don't want to come out. So the community would, if there was nobody there to stand up, the community would have left there to suffer. So community, you need leadership. The other thing is in terms of you need strategy, you need a plan. Because we have a plan and we've been planning for the past 4 years, we are able to say that, look, we have a plan and this does fit into our plan. So it's important that you plan. The second thing I'd like to say is that you need the will. Don't be afraid to stand up, even if it's the government. Don't be afraid to stand up for your rights, right? Nothing is wrong with standing up for your right. And in this case, like one of the residents said, we're literally fighting for our lives. And the third thing that I'd like to say is that look at the experience of Coverdale and think about if this happens in your community, if this comes to your community, what are you going to do? And you have to plan that if ever it happens to you, how you're going to respond. And Dr. Hines, I'd like to leave that. with the rest.
Thank you very much, Sister Audreyanna, and we will continue to cover the issue. We'll continue to keep in touch with you, and those of you who are available, please on Saturday go and give some solidarity. These kinds of facilities should be nowhere where people live. It doesn't matter which people, which race, which class. They have no place in any community, especially poor communities which do not have the big voices to push back on their behalf. Thank God for Sister Audreyanna Thomas, who is standing there with the people of Coverdale and giving leadership and voice to those who
Okay, one last thing. I just like to say that I am just the little voice, but
Yes.
I'm standing on the shoulders of some giants.
Thank you
And
very
I'd
much.
like to say that, like, you are one of those persons. You encourage me. Dr. Vince Adams is one of those persons. So I want to say that there are people in the background who come and they say, Audreyanna, here's my shoulder. Stand on it. So what you see Audreyanna at the top. You don't see the giants. On shoulders I am standing. And to the residents of Coverdale, those of you who come to me and say we support you, I thank you. You are giants too. And I want to say thank you to the residents of Coverdale for your support.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sister Audreyanna. And I will keep checking in with you. Please keep sending me information on the matter, and we will continue to cover this issue as we go along. Thank you much.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Have a good night.
Thank you. And to you, the audience, as usual, you are indomitable. You are the rock on which we stand. Tonight is the so-called debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and the other chap who is representing the Republican Party. Those of you who have the stomach, tune in and watch Sister Kamala demolish a male chauvinist, because that's what that chap is. He has no respect for women, especially Black women, you know, but that Black woman is going to put him in his place tonight, I predict. See you all tomorrow night. See you all tomorrow night, same time, same place, for another edition of Politics 101.